All right, let's move over to the women's bantamweight division now, where we got Elise Pereira coming in at minus 125, going up against Haley Cowan, who comes in at plus 105. Now, starting off on the Pereira side of things, she had a very underwhelming UFC debut when she took on Montserrat Rendon and lost that fight by split decision. That was skill for skill. Probably the worst fight we've ever seen inside the cage, and she managed to make it somewhat close, but it showed some of the greenness in her game. And the fact that she's 19 years old kind of goes to show why maybe this would have been too quick of a jump for her to get into the UFC. From fighting absolute bums on the regional scene, she fought one experienced opponent and won that fight by decision. But for the most part, she's just running through bums. It was not going to help her when she actually faced legitimate resistance as she faced in the Rendon fight. Rendon did a good job in terms of utilizing straighter shots down the pipe, whereas Pereira was kind of just moving forward recklessly, throwing big winging shots and hoping she could land a big enough one to put Rendon away. But it just didn't transpire that way. Pereira has raw potential and raw talent, but it's very hard to really see how much further she can take it if she stays at this UFC level. I think she would benefit much more from going to, the LFA and kind of sharpening her skills a little bit more. She's only 20 years old. There's no need to go out there, go on a losing streak, get cut from the UFC, and then just fade into oblivion. But luckily for her, she's facing somebody who is a fringe UFC fighter as well, and Haley Cowan, who is now 0-2 in the UFC after earning her contract to the Contender Series back in 2022. Now, that night she won a split decision. It wasn't the most entertaining fight, but for some reason, Dana's like, hey, she's got it. So that's enough for me to bring her into the UFC, and so far it hasn't really worked out that way. Cowan is athletic. She has, good athleticism. She has some decent power. She's very physical. She's very strong. And that's obviously what helped her on the regional scene get the wins the way that she did. But now we see her facing stiffer competition. It's not really working out for her. She couldn't have any success against Jamie Lynn Horth for the most part. And then against Nora Cornell, I thought the least possible or the least viable path to victory for Cornell ended up hitting that night. And that was Cornell winning that fight by decision. Cowan clearly wanted to get that fight into the grappling realm, and she did a decent enough job in the first round, even though she found herself in a deep armbar as soon as she got the takedown. She eventually worked out of it, but only two judges scored that round. I believe it was, let me just double check it. One judge scored that round against Cowan. That was kind of surprising. I thought Cowan clearly won that round. But the second round, we saw Cornell eventually get the back of Cowan and sink in that choke. Bad look to get submitted by a Muay Thai specialist like Cornell. I know Cornell has worked on her, complete mixed martial arts game, but that was a bad look for Cowan, who should have been strong enough to stay away from that type of approach there from Cornell. Cowan has maybe some physical potential, but in terms of actually being a skilled fighter, I think it's very tough for her, especially with her at 34 years old. Now, she goes up against Elise Pereira here, and this is, in my opinion, a fight, maybe not so much for Pereira in terms of, if she loses, she ends up getting cut. I think Cowan, if she loses, she probably ends up getting cut here, but it's a very low-level fight. Will the strength of Cowan allow her to stay away from the power that Pereira possesses? I'm probably thinking not. Pereira might even be able to get this into the grappling herself and have solid success there, but I think she's still very green. This is a horrible fight. This is one to be very questionable in terms of which side to have confidence on. It seems like, with Pereira at minus 125, the public is leaning her side a little bit more, which I kind of get. She is going to be more dead set on landing damage. She will be a little bit more reckless and move forward. Cowan, not as slick with her strikes down the pipe, so I think she'd kind of struggle to have success as well. I think Cowan will look to initiate her strength and grappling to try to take Pereira to the ground to muzzle her there, but I think Pereira will be throwing up submissions, trying to create scrambles, and I think she'll be the one more dead set on landing damage. So I'm going to go Pereira here, and Pereira by decision, but very, very low confidence. Yeah, let's see what Pereira can do to try to make up for that abysmal performance she had against Rendon, but I wouldn't trust either of these women, in terms of a bet either.